my good friend, my dear friends, my listeners, followers, I want to welcome you again to this broadcast. I have a major broadcast to make. But before that, I want to briefly make this short video before we go into that main one, which is the imprisonment of Babalola, which has been advertised since yesterday. I'm ready. But the crew, they want us to do this one first. Several years ago, I began a research about some of the founding fathers, faith figures, historical personalities, the characters of some of the prophetic movement, the apostolic movement in Africa. Okay, to know a bit about some of these people, their life, and even the apostolic movement itself, the revival movements, the prophetic movements that began all over across Africa, especially in West Africa. And I began to trace this movement. And I went to some of the archives to study some of these people. Those of them that I could still interact with some of the people who work with them, I was able to do that. But for most of them have gone. I'm talking about this movement that began around the first 2 decades of the last century. The revival movement, the great prophets, the great apostles of Africa. So, by the grace of God, I was able to complete this research. It took me to some African nations. I was in Ghana. I was in many parts of Nigeria. Okay. And so far as we know, we have covered a very, very detailed form all over Africa of some of these people. Beginning from 1870 to 1960, most of the prominent figures, most of the prominent prophetic personalities, apostolic figures of that era within this period that have emerged all over Africa between 1870 and 1960 were captured in the research. I am talking of somebody like William White Harris of Liberia, the man who was in prison, a Methodist. When an angel appeared to him, when he had an encounter, he has been the subject of most of his scholarly research, because during my research I discovered that virtually so because of that I was able to exhaustively research this man, William Harris. And today, as far as we go, in those first 3 decades, regarded as Africa's most successful evangelist, because he did what most people could not do. This was in the French-speaking countries. Fetishes was how to solve the problem of fetishes. Until when Harris came. Harris was the man whose revival across 3 nations, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, and the northern part of Ghana and Liberia. This man rose like a meteor and swept many people away, and many people away from fetishism, away from hedonism, away from rituals, away from evil medicine. Things that have become a problem to the colonial master. In a moment of month, this man solved the problem. I converted thousands of people. And he always told them, the people who instruct you are coming. And so these people bought the Bible. All villages will go, the big churches, no, without pastor. until a missionary came much 10 years after it, and found in most of those villages churches without pastor. When he broke the news to the Western world, it caused a shock, great shock. So far as we know, this man is regarded as one of the most successful evangelists in Africa. You need to read the story of William Wadi. I researched him and I've written about him. There's another man called Apolo Kivebulaya. Apolo Kivebulaya, Canon Apolo Kivebulaya of Uganda. Another man who revealed the likeness of Christ. When you talk about an African man in whom the personality of Christ was revealed, evidently revealed to the world, that was one of the men. One of the both white and black, they honor him because of the glory on his face and on his life. This was the man who took the gospel to the pygmies. This was the man who went to the pygmies in the forest, in the Congo forest, and introduced the gospel to them. He took the gospel to many of the people before whom Christ had never been named. A mighty man of faith. And then I've also researched our woman more than the prophet. He's another African general I've also researched. You will see here Moses Urimolade Tolase. So much distortion had come to the story of Kerubu and Seraphim that today the story of that organization is being used to tarnish his founding father. But it's not like that. Okay? When you go and read the story and the research we've done, then you will know that these were men that were called by God. They have also done another. Garrick Braide, the first man to start a main revival in this land, Nigeria, in Opobo. Garrick Braide in the Niger Delta. This was a man who came ahead of his time. This was a man who started powerful revival. This was the first healing revival in the entity now known as Nigeria. Before the colonial power rose against it, one of the major problems in Niger Delta had been drinking, gin, alcohol. This man came within a moment of time, he forbade alcohol, and everybody had him and listened and submitted. And the British colonial government lost £576,000 in 1 year as a result of our people's abstention plan due to the call of this revivalist. That was a great revival, the very first ever active revival we have in this land. You will also see a story here. Garrick Braide. Story of Garrick Braide. He was ahead of his time. Okay? And there's another man, another great man in Congo. Part of the problem they are having in Congo today is because of what was done to this prophet, Simon Kimbangu. If you get to Congo today, you are the Congolese of the Kimbanguist movement. This was the man behind it, Simon Kimbangu. Okay? Another man in whom Christ was revealed, mighty miracles. White men came the later years. For the first time, we see the Christ of God living from an African personality. But you see, he only ministered for 6 months. The same way imperialism, the same colonial power that did not allow today Nigeria to function, that did not allow Africa to function. They make sure that he did not try. They came against the movement. He was arrested. And he spent about 50 years in prison and died. That's part of the problem today Congo is facing. And there's the story of Mama Nku, a woman of notable vision from South Africa. A woman of powerful and notable vision. Powerful and notable vision. Okay? A woman like who started one of the first healing movement in South Africa, Mother Nku. And then there is the story. Also, you will also read it here. I've showed you a lot yesterday about Babalola. You see an instrument of revival. You have read of, I've heard something about it, but you will see the authentic things here. An instrument of revival. The challenge of December of Babalola. You will see detail here. Research work from high witnesses, from people who actually saw, not telltales, not conjecture, not estimation, not human projection. Documented facts. Okay. Then there is Peter Anim, the powerful man from Ghana. Okay. You will also read about him. And then there is a woman like no other. Okay. The story of Sophie Ajayi, Nigeria's first prophetess. You will also read the story in this collection. Okay. Those that is among the gens. So these are the people. Okay. And then there's a man who raised 4-day-old corpse in Ibadan here at Kivebulaya and sparked a revival, who came to Abeokuta in 1930, November. Mighty man of power, a mighty man of failure, Daniel Orekoya. Okay? The man who raised a pregnant woman. This is not hearsay. I'm talking about true story. Pregnant woman who died and was prayed and raised this woman from the dead. All over Ibadan, 4 days. 3 months later, the woman gave birth to the daughter, the child in her womb. I met that woman, that child in her womb. I took picture with her. You will see everything in this book. This is the man, Daniel Orekoya. Okay? Another African general. Okay? And then you will see the story of Omotunde, the most powerful of them all. Terrible power, dangerous power. Emmanuel Omotunde, okay, of Okeajayi. The man who does not pray, whether it's blinded, whether he blesses you or curses you, instanta. The answer, the result, you begin to feel it immediately. Terrible, powerful man, great man. And there is the story of Sampson Opong. Okay? The man in Ghana who usually go with a staff and with the stick. Mighty man of failure. Now, all these things, all this research I've done, 14 of all the prominent man, the alias Letaba of South Africa is also there. Mavago of South is also there. Samuel Kimbangu of Congo is there. Apolo Kivebulaya is also there. From Uganda, all over Africa, detailed work, research of over 40 years. Okay? They are captured in this book, African Ghost Generals. African Ghost Generals. Okay? African Ghost Generals. All right? You can get it in this book. Everything that I've said, you can get everything in this book. Detailed work. The book is available in your bookshop, or you can contact us and get the story. So thank you very much. Thank you for. Oh yeah.